Prof. Well, though I have a banking background, but I'm more of an economist these days, apart from being a politician. So I'm more interested in the economics part of it. And you know, our training as economists actually prepares us to be quite versatile. That's what it does. And that's why my brother Sheikh Madaju and a few other economists, including Dr. Onoha, they're now in this space. Because it tells you how to balance a number of factors. But I want to start by saying one quoting James Michener. He said, "An age was called dark, not because the light refused to shine, but because people refused to see it. An age was called dark, that is the dark ages, not because the sun refused to shine, but because people refused to see it." And as a lot of people were discussing today, that quotation kept coming to mind. Because even if we look at solar energy alone, and the fact that we're on the equator, we have a lot of sun, and even the development of the solar energy, where it is today, it became cheaper. But Africa, Nigeria, had very little input. I remember when Abdul Salam left back to Mina in 1999, after handing over. He powered his house with solar energy. His money was very valuable. He spent 7.7 million. It was innovation. But today, I go to some shanty towns. I see that people have some small mini solar going on in front of their houses, whether it works well or not. So, Prof, if you give me just 1 minute, what I want to say is that I actually did a bit of research. I found out that the idea behind alternative energy actually links back to education and how a people think. So right now, people are exploring things like wave energy. They put things inside the sea that goes with the wave and generates electricity using that one. Of course, you know about wind and all the other ones. Biomass. Even people are using crematorium heat to generate energy now. Meaning that until we begin to think for ourselves, what our problems are telling us in Nigeria is DIY. DIY. So I say that no matter how many power grids they import in the ministry, and I think, Your Excellency, my First Lady, because I'm also from Ondo State, she mentioned that a lot of these contracts, but we've seen just the futility of some of those things. My solution is that it links with the educational sector. Part of what we're pushing is that any student at second level, let's say year 200, in any polytechnic, studying electrical engineering, whatever they call it, or in the universities, should be getting involved in projects in different areas that can solve problems for this country. We should be able to find a scenario where we're deploying our students to go and experiment in those villages. Now, this is what this is going to do. Apart from keeping the money within the family eventually, that is going to ensure we're building that capacity you've been talking about. Now, there's no amount of training that Blue Camel can do, or what's the other company, or A. Steven, or what. You're going to keep struggling. What we need to do is kind of a rewiring of our mentality in this country. And I believe that if we stay, and not only in the electric sector, but I've told them in the energy sector, I've told them we've been on some electricity, whatever forum like this. Until we take this back to our students and empower them, and you can actually put some money in their pocket. They'll be so glad to get involved in those projects. And I think that that is what will solve most of our problem in this country, not only in electricity or energy, but even in terms of infrastructure building, in agriculture and what have you. We are not, that is also what is called human capital development, which everybody is blaming us for today, Prof. Human capital development is not just about spending money in education or health. It's about ensuring that the money you spend is powered through your youth. Okay. And if you can do that, I think that this country is on the way to something great. Thank you.
We can come back to that. What do you think? Do you think the value chain has really expanded and then the risk, becoming much more dispassionately elongated, not too risky anymore?
Yeah, well, I think with the involvement of more players in that sector, people will see, for example, consistent energy, they've been there for 5, 6, 7 years, demand is surviving, that means there must be money there. A lot of people who would find money elsewhere, who don't even need bank funding, will go in there because they believe consistent is making money. That's the way we think here. And if there's more people there and we see that it is sustainable, then, of course, the bankers will feel a bit more comfortable. financing the sector. My own take is only that I always want to have a very holistic and systemic view of things. When one of the guys, some other group of people organized an electricity summit, and a lot of people came and were complaining. Citibank was there, the Discos, Gencos, TCN, everybody was there, complaining about funding and saying, oh, I wish we could find the money to do this and that. The meter manufacturers were there. But it was very clear to me, and I told them right there that, listen, your problem doesn't seem to be like funding, because here was the meter guy complaining that he doesn't get paid by the disco. The disco is telling you he doesn't get paid by the customer. The Gencos complain they don't get paid by the disco. And the TCN is telling the Genco, please don't generate, because if you generate too much, we can't take it in the grid. And it's just great, because this is where alternative energy comes in. That by now, all of this talk about embedded energy, providing for a small space and making your money doing that should not be an issue. So the banks will see it. Again, but I must say this, Prof. All of this thing is pointing to one thing. Nigerian economy has been an under-imaginative, a sub-optimized economy. My research has shown we is a country with a big-for-nothing GDP at around $400 billion, where we're actually doing the lowest budget to GDP in the world at 6%, whereas the United States budgets 36% of its GDP year on year. Nigeria is budgeting 6%. South Africa is budgeting about 30%, 35%. Countries in Africa, even Ghana is doing about 25% of its GDP year on year. And you see this underachievement looking for. It has come to permeate down the society. All right? I like the fact that the lady that was sitting there before said that, we make this assumption. Once there's electricity, Nigerians will just be productive everywhere. Not necessarily. They may just watch more Nollywood, and maybe they'll be happier, which is great. You know what I mean? But by now, we need to begin to get very specific to say there's a lot more we can achieve. The bankers should not be scared. Bankers are scared, but this is an industry that is wide open. And like many people have said here today, again, we're going to just leave this terrain. The foreign people will come. Somebody will come and finance it. And at the end of the day, look at what's going on even in the telecom sector that we like to talk about. MTN is being fined every now and then for remitting too much money abroad. And so I would like to say that the problem is in financing, but that's not the only issue we have. If we move the furniture around a bit and we begin to understand where we need to be as a country, all right? Because I wrote a petition to the present administration from my platform as a presidential candidate, not an aspirant. And I'm telling them, listen, you are dropping the budget next in the budget. Population is increasing at 3%. 6 million more people are added to your mouths to feed on a yearly basis. Inflation is running at about 12%, meaning the value of money is going down. And now you say, oh, we budgeted 9.1 trillion this year, we're going to budget 8.6 trillion next year. Then you have to explain to us, because that means that there's no provision for just about anything, And so all of us have to think bigger. The banks have to understand that they can make a lot more money from this economy. Each and every one of us have to understand that we can be 50%, 100% more productive than we are. And I think all of that kind of thinking is what will come back into making the banks more comfortable, letting them know that the banking has moved beyond go and bring your mother, go and bring your father's property, and all of those kind of stuff. But I would actually commend Sterling Bank, because I think they're one of those banks who are thinking outside the box in this regard, making things easier for people to get by. And we want more banks to toe that line. That's where you find the NPLs, the non-performing loans. You won't find it in this kind of sector. When everybody was rushing into real estate, a lot of banks ran into real estate. And now all of those vacant buildings, some of them are financed by banks. When people were rushing into oil and gas, all right, when the IOC sold all the onshore and marginal field, every bank rushed into oil and gas. When they publish their non-performing loans, we see where they are funded with billions and billions of naira. All right, and I believe that if they fund a sector like alternative energy, which is not the future of energy, but the present reality of energy and power in the world, I believe they can't get it wrong. Thank you very much. On behalf of those people who are paying those high amounts of money per kilowatt that you mentioned, I hope they are not villagers. I would want, perhaps, guys like this in the private sector should be doing mini grid for places like VGC, Banana Island, all of those which should be off grid. Look, where I live in Abuja here is those kind of estate, not quite upscale like that. But when I was the first person who moved inside this estate. It was after I moved in that the engineer, the supervisor of the estate came to me and said, Oga, there was no lights there. He said, Oga, where's the nearest NEPA office? I said, well, he said he wants to go and talk to them so they can connect this estate to the grid. And we had always written, I'm a columnist. For 15 years now, I've been writing every week. There was a time we were advising one of those past government that, look, what you should do is ensure that you don't approve any estate, 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom, all of those luxury estates, without a renewable energy plan on it. Tell us where the solar panels are going to be. You are selling the house for 75 million naira with swimming pool, and then you're connecting to the grid. We know where the problems are, you know. So again, I don't want to live here until I do one thing, and it's to let us know that, for me, one man said, we need a leader that's thinking 200 years on. That's me, actually. But you know what? But what I'm saying is this. Let's forget all these little problems we have. Financing, for me, is a little problem. Know one thing. Alternative energy is about the rewiring of we as a people. All right? That's the larger implication. This thing is begging us to rewire ourselves, to start to think for ourselves. The other day in Ikogosi, Chief Afe Babalola wrote an article talking about how in Ikogosi, they finance Ikogosi is down, Fayose did not develop it and all of that stuff. You know, but I was now thinking, Ikogosi is a spring. There's water there. Now there's rain falling all over Nigeria. It seems to be extended. The rivers are swollen. How many mini turbines are they turning? You know, in other places, those rivers will be turning some turbines. And that's why I said, let's go back to the universities, the polytechnics. Let them also begin to develop things from the ground up. I was speaking with those lovely ladies from B-More, and, you know, I was touching some of the solar panel, my first time actually, I won't deceive you. You know, I touched them, and they said, how is this made? So it's silicon. Okay, how do you get it from silicon? Where do you get silicon? One of them, I said, is this sand? He said, yes, sand, some sort of sand. You know, now, that's kind of rewiring. Beyond buying the silicon, fixing them on the glass, and then selling them, we should be thinking of going from the ground up. Because again, the point about the renewable energy is that the world seems to be thinking, and the people who are thinking about this thing, they're very young people. I've seen where somebody installed a mini grid, a kind of a turbine, that when people are driving, you're driving this way on an expressway, and the other guys are driving this way, it turns some parapets in between the roads, and it turns a kind of turbine somewhere. I've seen where, you know, thank you, sir. Thank you, Prof. You know, I've seen where someone channeled a very small stream into some sort of turbine, just channeled it out and back in, but when that water goes in there, there's something that rotates faster, and it turns the turbine fast. And you know, very smart ways of thinking. Our problem will call it smart energy. Smart world now. All right? The young people, I'm challenging you. Don't let the old people hold you down. We did not start thinking fast. You must start thinking into the future. Your challenge is not all this Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, Christian, Muslim thing they talk about. Your challenge and your opposition are your colleagues in other countries of the world. They're doing great things. And I think that you can get it done too. Thank you very much. And vote for me.
And I think we are much more.
Well done,
Cameraman, let's.
Okay. The lady in the middle.
Thank you.
Look, don't be saying a nightclub near you, don't meet a bad guy, because you look like a bad guy. Thank you, Auntie. Well done. God bless. Where's your card? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Now they go to there. Okay. Second, thank you, sir. I'm out of here.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, thank you so much. Shega, I beg, and I God, I beg, I take beg you. Try and be in that much. Try. Boss.
Thank you, sir.
You see, interested in that by governorship? Yes. Thank you. Yeah. You have to do that. What's that? The phone is there now, no problem. Thank you. Thank you. Your Excellency, my permission to fall out. I've been with them since very early in the morning. Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you.
And I wish you well.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes. Ah, look at my first lady. She's not in Akure. I'm coming to see. Oh, that's my boss. Can you imagine? Thank you.